the biggest headline that seems to have everybody's attention. Connor McDavid suspended for 3 games after cross-checking Connor Garland in the face. I know a lot of people have probably seen the clip. The two were tangled up for quite a long time. Kind of looked like some sumo wrestling going on there on the ice, and then the wires crossed and McDavid threw a nice little aggressive cross check to the face of Garland. So before we get into all the details of the suspension, I want to hear your guys' immediate reaction.
I want to go second.
Okay. I was surprised he got three. I was just surprised the NHL gave out three. With the amount of nonsense that was sort of going on at the end of that game, I mean, McDavid and Garland were basically, it almost reminded you of like the first 5 yards of like a receiver and a DB. Like they were just hand fighting, and then it turned into Greco-Roman wrestling, and then it kind of turned into WWE a little bit, and then there was a little bit of CCM to the back of the gums by Connor there. But I don't, I'm fine with three. I got to be honest. I'm totally fine with it. And, I know everyone was saying, oh, superstar should get superstar treatment and this should have been one game or nothing at all. But another thing I think is interesting is when you factor in the Mojo thing that wasn't given a suspension for almost, what was that, like a week ago now, give or take. I know it shouldn't. I still feel like that somehow was a factor in their decision.
Interesting. Yeah, I mostly agree with what you said. I think there's a lot of confusion about this online right now because I'm seeing a lot of different takes, and some of them it's very clear to me that the people that are giving these takes don't even fully understand what they're saying. And so, like, for example, I saw one today that was like it was someone criticizing like the Oilers for being like, oh, they think he shouldn't get suspended because he's good or something like that. It's like they're not saying he shouldn't get suspended because he's good. They're saying he shouldn't have to cross-check somebody because he's really good and you should have called a penalty on the guy that was antagonizing him originally. So like there's a lot of confusion with that kind of stuff going on. However, my overall take on it, and the main point that I was excited to really chat about was I'm of the camp that I don't believe that McDavid should get special treatment just because he's good. However, I do agree that what Garland did was a penalty. Initially, I almost thought they both were kind of holding each other. Watched it back. It looks a little more like maybe Garland's actually wrapped his legs around him, kind of holding him down, and then gets on top of him. Real sensual move there, by the way. Like real sexy with it.
It's missing
Um,
the rose petals there, boys.
yeah, no, exactly. But all in all, I'm totally fine with the suspension, and I'm kind of happy to see it, honestly. Especially, I was watching that game live where he chicken winged Marcus Johansson, Capitals legend that is, and I am glad to see the league treat him the same that they would treat anyone else that cross checks somebody in the face. I think the suspension was deserved, and that's that.
Mac, well said. A lot of different angles. I like how you brought up that people were saying he shouldn't even have to do this when we're not really debating that, although I do agree. I do think it's worth mentioning because apparently in the 21st century you have to issue a statement over everything. The Oilers released an official statement, quote, "The Oilers organization is disappointed and we share in our fans' frustration over the 3-game suspension of Captain Connor McDavid. We support him through this process, and the organization and our fans look forward to having him back in the lineup versus Seattle next week." Going through this process, is he going through rehab? Like,
It's a
what are we doing
Yeah.
week.
here?
It's a
So
week of him like just not playing games, but he's still like he's allowed to practice, he's allowed to skate. You just don't get to see him for 60 minutes
Yeah,
on
no. So this
Tuesday
really pissed
night.
me off. Like what I read this as was like the Oilers trying to like put pressure on the league to be like, don't suspend him again, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like that's total fucking bullshit to me. Like I just think it's garbage that I also didn't like what I forget if it was Drysdale or someone else on the Oilers said something like, well, the NBA protects LeBron and the NFL protects Mahomes. Like, enough with this fucking shit. We don't want to be the NBA. We are the NHL, and we don't want some kind of fucking like halo around. At least I don't want like a halo around one dude. I want a bunch of dudes out there playing the same fucking sport, and I want them all answering to the same bell.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the fastest way to discredit a professional sports league is when stuff isn't called across the board. I mean, you
100%.
you nailed it. You made a great point with the LeBron James thing. It's like how many different videos out there, are there out there of LeBron blatantly traveling on an inbound pass in front of an official, three, four, five steps, and it just doesn't get called.
Yep.
I know that's basketball, completely different sport, completely different game, but I think you got to call the game.
There's so many things going through my head. Like, I agree, Mac. Maybe don't put a halo around a guy, although I do personally believe refs can ref guys a little differently. I know you and I were going a little back and forth on that in
Right.
our group chat.
Hmm.
Um, Let me ask you guys this. How many games do you think it should have been? Or do you think this is right?
I think anything more than three, I would have said would have been a little bit excessive. One, two, or
Hmm.
three, I would have been like, yeah, that's fine.
I agree. I would have been
Because
perfectly fine with one, two, or three.
I think we've in the past 5 years or so, we've definitely seen suspensions that should have been a game and were more. We've also seen suspensions that should have been 10 and ended up being two. So
Yeah.
I think they got this one in the range at least.
Hmm. I agree.
So I completely agree, and it's wild to me this is three. I think it probably should and could have been one. I know a lot of people have brought up maybe comparable or comparable suspensions. Penn's bias. And I looked up the year. I think of 2019, Evgeny Malkin literally took his stick full swing at Michael Raffles' head and got
Forgot
one
about that
game.
one.
One game for literally taking a baseball bat like to someone's head. And McDavid, I like it kind of makes sense why the wires crossed. I don't blame him. I thought maybe a game would have been fine, but
And
Yeah.
what year was that you said that Malkin got one?
2019, I'm watching it right now
Okay.
on my monitor.
Yeah,
I
I do think in the last 5 years, they're trying to crack down way more on specifically cross checks and also specifically anything involving the head or face. And
Absolutely.
so I think that in 2019, maybe this is one, or maybe it's even a fine in 2019.
yeah, I don't know.
I think the
I do
bigger issue overall here is where in the hell is like his teammate so he doesn't have to
Yeah.
do this? Like that's
Yeah,
the
right.
biggest problem if you're the Oilers. It's like you want to put out a statement saying we support Connor McDavid through this process. Maybe like I don't know, bring someone in there who can protect the guy. Not saying he can't do that himself, but you also don't want, now you're without your superstar best player on the planet for 3 games. I don't really think that's a recipe for success for the Oilers.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, where the hell is Corey Perry in that situation? But he's probably just not on the ice in that situation.
Correct.
So it's like,
It
yeah.
happened with like 3 seconds left in the game. I
And
think
that's
Right.
the part we haven't really discussed yet is that like everyone's mad. Everyone kept saying, I have no problem with what McDavid did because he's thinking about is trying to tie the game, and Garland is like stopping the like best player on the ice, best player in the world from like being able to score a goal. And so, it's McDavid getting up and being like, fuck you, I could have just tied this game,
hmm
whatever. But I don't know.